Hello folks and friends, my name is Claycraft Nation, and today we are going to be making Grogu slash Baby Yoda slash the child from the Mandalorian. So if you're interested, let's just get straight to it.
Alright, so to start off this clay sculpture, we're going to need some foil and a little bit of wire. And what we're going to do first is form out Baby Yoda and then the base. Once we have the basic structure of each one, we can put the base aside and start working on Baby Yoda with a little bit of clay as a base sheet for the rest of the clay sculpture. Once we have the basic shape for this clay sculpture finished, we can start working on his little baby hands. And for this, it's going to be the exact same technique. We're going to use foil to make his base of the arm, and then we're going to cover it up with a little bit of clay. To finish smoothing everything out, we can start working on a little bit more of the details for the arms, such as the actual sleeves of the space in between where the clothing and the skin is. And now it's time for the actual details, such as the wrinkles of the fabric clothing and where the lines stretch just because he's pulling out his hand like that. Now when making wrinkles, it's always best to use some kind of fabric clothing to hang it on some kind of chair or something like that, just so you can actually get to see the actual shapes and wrinkles that are formed when it's gravity pulling down on the clothing. Now we can start working on the hands, and as you see right here, I already detailed the fingers, which there's only 3, and I try to make the nails as sharp and pointy from the top as possible, and then just make all those little line wrinkles where the joints are. Then I make a little line or a zipper for the middle of his clothing jacket. Then at the top of his clothing, there's this piece of fabric that I'm guessing is his collar. But either way, once we got that done, we could start working on his head and his face, which most of this I did off camera just because of the details. I had to really look into it. But either way, the eyes and the ears, they were basic shapes, but you had to just carve them out and just try to be as smooth as possible, making sure that you don't leave any creases or lines, and just try to make it as clean as you possibly can. And after that, we could put it to bake. Now we can start working on the base, and for this is pretty much going to be the same strategy that we use for making Baby Yoda or Grogu, which is wrapping the whole thing in clay and then from there making more details. Now I have seen several other comments, as I did in the last video, about other requests that you guys want me to make, which I hope, once again, that I hope I'll be able to work on those as soon as possible. But one that stuck out to me was actually making the Mandalorian. I think that would be a great idea and great addition to this clay sculpture, and hopefully I can start working on that soon. After baking, I decided to make a little plant or bush on the side. Now originally this Grogu sculpture was just going to have him focusing on a butterfly flying around. But to make it more subtle that the butterfly is on a wire, I'm going to have that plant there in order to hide most of the wire. After baking the base and having everything together, we start working on the painting process, which was my favorite part of this because it really brought the whole sculpture to life. And just like we did with the clay sculpting part, we're going to start off with Grogu first. So to start off, we are going to be making his cloth or his covering. Then I decided to work on his face, which was pretty hard, so I decided to do that off camera as well, but it was a very light tone of green mixed with a little bit of lime and very small touch of blue. And finally, we're going to just paint his eyes completely black and then use gloss later on. And now it's time to paint the base. And for this, it was pretty tricky at first, trying to figure out what I should do with it, and as far as whether I should put grass or just leave it all as rocks. Eventually I decided to add grass later on, which you'll see later on in the video. But for now, I decided to create different kinds of colored rocks in order to create that organic feeling for the base. Then I decided to paint the plant. Although it might be covered later on with a bunch of grass that I'm going to be using for the floor as well, I decided to paint it either way just because there might be some visible after the whole process. Once we had that finished, we could start working on the butterfly, which was a pretty simple painting process. The only thing is that I had to be very slow and cautious when making the details in order to not mess up. And finally, my favorite part, making the grass, which was fake grass. It was actually prop grass that I found at Hobby Lobby, and it worked very well for this project, especially since I try to keep everything vibrant and matching the tone of the clay sculpture. Unfortunately, the difficult part was having to glue this onto the base. I had to use super glue, and most of the time it went onto my fingers, and I just had a lot of struggle with it. So I decided to use these little finger rubber gloves in order to prevent my skin from getting worse. And after a few painful hours of putting on the grass, we could start working on the bush, which was another few excruciating hours of putting fake grass onto clay. And after adding a few more details off camera, it's time to show you the final result.
Alright guys, now that we finished the clay sculpture, I just love the way it turned out. I know that I say that with every clay sculpture, but honestly I'm really proud of this one just because of the wrinkles and the details that I added into the actual clay sculpture. That, and on top of the diorama that I added to it. I think everything that I added was pretty solid. But I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. And if you enjoyed this video, consider giving it a thumbs up and possibly subscribe if you haven't already. But anyways guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one, which once again hopefully it won't be that long from this one, but yeah. Anyways, have a great weekend and bye guys.